And I'm back again. Right, just a quick recap. We are on the user widget blueprint. This in the last video we created some bindings for each one of these text boxes on our buttons. So effectively, the button gets pressed, the value that gets pressed is tied into the value that for the button, and okay, that was our function that's there for each one of those, and then the brush as well. We created we took the texture and converted that to a brush for the image. So now that actually finishes the event graph for the widget, and we're finished with this blueprint. And I think I can close it down and forget about it. So effectively, we kind of, while I was in between the videos here, what I've done is I've taken the image value that was being displayed on the blueprint on the widget and just populated each one of these in the list. So each image now tallies with the player. Okay, so what we get is if I press the play button, you should see just one of these come up with an image, which is kind of what we were anticipating. But in this video now we're going to kind of focus on some of the multiplayer game aspects of it. So we're going to have to set up our editor just so that we can see more than one player. So in the drop down menu for the play button, change the number of players to 2, and we can select new editor window, PIE. This will work better in 4.11.2 than it would in 4.10. Okay, so I'll click the play button now, and you can see I've got 2 cards, and each card has a different player with different values. Okay, and that's what you should have also if you followed along. So we've got the makings of a game kind of forming here. So let's have a look at the kind of the last bit of this tutorial. All I'm going to get doing really in the next couple of videos is talking between the 2 players and checking the values of one player to the other and telling you who's won, and then we'll summarize that up and leave it there, and then when I get more time I will come back to this tutorial and we'll look at how we kind of finish this, take this game through to completion. We'll look at at the networking and that sort of stuff. So let's kind of move on here. So this is my game state blueprint, where we've created the data tables, the data structures. We've created a reference to my client and my HUD's widget, and then we passed in some references here to update each widget, which is why you get 2 separate clients with 2 separate that was index 0 of deck 1 and index 0 of deck 2 on the client and the host. Okay, so I've got them set up there. Now the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to call a binding. Oh, do you know what I haven't done? I have failed to add something to this function here. So in this function, what I want to do is I want to pass a reference to which client or host is running this, is actually executing this bit of the code at the time, at any one time. So I'm going to add a new input to it, and this is going to be a reference to my HUD, because that's how I have, oh sorry, it is my widget, sorry. And that's how I kind of differentiate between players. There is other ways of doing this, which I've since kind of found out, but this was the way I initially designed it, so we'll just stick with this. So this will be my HUD, or the kind of, what would you call it, player? Yeah, HUD. Well, yeah, my HUD, which I don't really want to kind of deviate from the fact that it's a HUD reference, or but it is the player HUD, isn't it? Player's HUD. Okay, so I've closed the widget up, but if you remember, in my widget I created an event dispatcher, and this event dispatcher basically passes through an enum. Okay, and this is a part of the tutorial where we look at how that kind of comes into play across the, with the replication, multiplayer replication. So from this part of the sequence, I am calling, so bind event to, and it was something called, what was it called? Let's have a look. My button, of course it was. So bind event to my button. No, bind event to bind event. Yes, it's there. Look, button. If we untick context sensitive, my button then becomes available. Okay, so content sensitive just basically says, these are the commands, the function you'd probably use if you were using the game state blueprint, but we're actually communicating from the widget blueprint. So untick this, and then you can see that these functions become available. So this is bind event to my button, and I've got an event coming off here. Let's just compile that. So it's telling me that I need to make a connection, and I'm going to pass in a target. So I'm going to say it was this player that called this event target, event binding. I'm going to drag off of this red node and search for a custom widget, custom event. I'm going to add a custom event, and I'm going to call this one the player turn logic, because we differentiate between the player and when it's their turn here. And you'll notice this custom event, unlike the others, has kind of got this enum attached to it magically, but that's no magic at all. Yeah, we brought in this binding from the widget, and we passed in the enum. We created that with an enum, and now we are kind of calling it and binding it to this custom event, and it knows from this binding that the event should be passing through a reference to the e number. How useful is that? So we are now going to differentiate between client and host by searching for the switch has authority node. Okay, so this is where multiplayer game logic gets cool, because what we want to do here is we're gonna have a look at this bit of the code the server is going to run, and only the server can run this. So if I switch on e underscore my enum, I've got a special node which is linked to my e number, yeah, and it creates this node, and it contains just the values, and it wants an input of one of these values. Well, I've got an input here, or I've got an output here. We can go to an input over here. So I'm going to pass in a reference to whichever one of these buttons clicked it and what value they clicked, which one of the buttons was clicked to fire this. Okay, so that E number is now set to the value of the button from the client or the host. We're going to do the same with the remote, but we'll do that in a second. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at, well, we want to compare them. We're going to take the views and we're going to say, is the view value greater than player? So we want an integer. Is an integer greater than an integer, like this? And we're going to, if it is, we're going to say branch. So there's my condition, true or false. We're going to say, do this. My value is higher than his, but we have to bring that value in. I'm going to say deck 1, get that, and we're going to say get, like that. I'm going to break the structure for this. Let's make this context sensitive. There you go, break the structure there. Let's push this back a bit, and I want the views there, and then I want deck 2, and do the same again. We're going to get a value for that one. We're going to break the structure there, and then we are going to plug that into there. So we're going to check to see whether this value for deck 2 is higher or lower than the same value for the views in deck 1, and then we're going to say yes, it's true, or yes, it's false. But we're always checking the first card here, and we never kind of cycle through the cards. We're not kind of moving the cards around in the deck. They're always kind of stay stationary from top to bottom. So I need to kind of build a little kind of iterative kind of way of cycling through each card in the deck. So I'm going to create a new variable, and this is going to be index 1, which is going to be an integer, and another one called index 2, which is also going to be an integer. And I'm going to hook that one up. I'm going to hook that one up to that, and I'm going to hook this one up to this, and I'm going to make sure that these two are also replicated, because I want to see the client and the host will both need to know which card in the deck we're reading from here. Okay. Hopefully this will get a bit more clear as we finish it, but we are going to need to replicate this bit of the code here for each one of those pins. So let's do that there, and we want that for the subs, uploads, and the position. We can drop this down here. I'm going to say subs, uploads, position, subs, uploads, position. Okay, so now I'm comparing deck 1 against deck 2 for each one of these values. Compile and save. Now we are going to do the same down here, and I'm all about saving time, so Control C, Control V, and we'll drag that over here, and we'll take another reference to the E number, we'll plug that in there. We'll take the remote branch and plug that in there, and let's take that value there, Control, drag it down, Control, drag that down, Control. I could just put less than symbols and remove everything if you want. If that's what you want to do, you can do. This does exactly the same thing, just by swapping these pins around. I'm looking for the value that's less than, or I've just basically said this one now needs to be more than this one for it to be true or false. And we could do, the logic is up to you. But yeah, this will work. So there we have it. So what have we done so far? We set the viewport up to be to player. We've taken the logic up further. We've added a reference to the player HUD here. We haven't passed it through. We need to do that. We need to take the client HUD reference. We could just take it from here, to be honest, but let's do it from here. We're going to pass that through there. Okay. So when we call the game logic, we know that this client or this client has sent it. We've taken that binding from our widget that sets the E number. We've taken that binding, we've called a custom function which passes that binding through. We've set the switch on my E number, and that switch basically takes whichever button click was pressed and then runs the corresponding branch. And we're going to compare these values for deck 1 against these values for deck 2, and then do something with them. And we'll do that in the next video. Compile and save.